Okay, some Wi-Fi manager, some webmaster, some networking. I don't know if that would be the server, the the bypass server, the server bypass. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And entering the foyer, lobbying into the reception area. Yeah, okay, yeah. In any case, yeah, so I was like talking and now it's presenting that trimming, like not funny, hey, that's not funny, okay. And predominantly I've been like recording. I mean, if I want to, I think the longest I have is like an hour and a half of just not nonstop talking. But yeah, they're like throwing that crap about like trimming crap right in the middle of like recording here. So like I'm having some like on site like the satellite like within range, kind of like a huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Some interrupt bypass. In any case, yeah. So I was like recording and I think there may have been maybe 5, 7, maybe close to 8 or 9 minutes that I'm going to try and pick up where I left off because some like thing about that just like happened. So like anyway, so I'm getting to the part about the misappropriation allocation of the Mississippi and the ISS and the SSI and the thing about the Iowa caucus and political science and the thing about the convention and celebration of confetti and graffiti and some idea of a preliminary prejudice product registration of a birth certificate and in my mind it seemed to be the thing about whether or not if graffiti and confetti is some idea of like the mayor's office of proclamations and declarations in the form of like the idea of like what Univision only might only seem as a pastel being 73 in Harris and some idea of like Israel between a code blue like star six, deep star six of like space exploration and below sea level and what nanoluminance is to measuring the density of like luminance as compared to like a rainbow or a diamond difference between night vision being the thing about the nano units a measurement. But in any case, yeah, so like measuring, the colors of a rainbow is likewise like a prism and a diamond that way measured in like nanoluminous. And how true it is about biometrics, about biometrics or light scribe. Hadn't really thought about it, but thought about whether it's a left wing or a right wing percentile in the elevator is ultimately in my mind. The humor a little bit about the percentile and some some idea like only what stationary engineering would mean, beyond, thought about like a preliminary prejudice product registration of a birth certificate or what that is. Even, the footprint being like, the carbon footprint or the purple stuff or the idea of biometrics and light scribe. I mean, in a whole different perception between the feet and the hands and the fingers, normally biometrics would present the light scribe what might not even be normally thought of in really any kind of way of like a birth certificate and where that actually takes place of beyond the birth certificate like of age like the deal about where the thought about um the carbon footprint the graphite thing about the footprint and how true it is about the actual that if graphite's actually involved. But I'm kind of wondering if the thing about Mobile One and the graphite and Mobile One is like the idea of a stationary engineer and what a preliminary purchase of a product registration of a birth certificate would mean to like Mobile One and viscosity and graphite as compared to the carbon footprint and what that is on the front lines of the beachfront or think about the military barrel determinant, or what that is in the Bureau of Biostatistics, or a method of banking deciding if a checking has only the idea of a separation between church and state, or some idea between life and death, or an ATM being used as a fixture, whether if it's only identifying maybe some history as compared to futures and options, seemed to be the thing about it. Yeah. So in any case, so like think about the Mississippi once again, and it would seem to be political science. Conventions identifying, normally graffiti and confetti. Many people might not identify as a yay or nay of Washington D.C. In my mind, it hadn't really been identified, as Senate's participation in a congressional act, or how it's all combined as whether at the House of Representatives or some idea of like the House Speaker would be maybe some idea of graffiti or confetti, of whether a preliminary prejudice would only be the idea of proclamations and declarations, and if that's going to be determined to be a fixture in real estate, defining the meaning of whether squelching a redundant frequency is only the idea of knowing that 8 ohms is like, infinite lines of a 90-degree right angle, ultimately the equator at 90 degree, or some idea of point of origin of military dying. Having what access would only mean of the word globalization, the international financial management of international banking systems, in my mind, or some idea of like some absolutes in a vertical that would represent quantum of like, live audio production. The one and only time I saw it was like at Commandos. I didn't even know at the time what I was looking at. But it seemed to be, like once again, beyond like post-production, customizing waveform of quantum being the thing about, the horizontal parameters and customizing waveform in post-production that way. That's compared to the one and only time at Commandos, out off of the FM 1960. And live production presenting transparent parameters in a vertical as a digitized orbital digital signal processing, what would maybe give the impression of going beyond the parameters, presenting the thought and perception of psychoacoustics, not really controlling psychoacoustics beyond the parameters and post production. Likewise, or making it as probably the expertise beyond the degree itself of just like post production as compared to doing it like live. But anyway, so there was like the phrase of like perpendicular spiral involving what a cycle per second oscillation would mean at a 90 degree, what would be half a cycle above and below, like on the outer rail of like I-45 Gulf Freeway at FM 528, which is NASA Road 1, not far from NASA, like a half a cycle above and below with a dot. It's the design on it, okay, but at a 90 degree it would present like a circle with a dot on it. And the thing about it is that would be actually like the Statue of Liberty's, schematic, or the thought of like a 90 degree of like a cone or a pylon, or that unit of measure of perpendicular spiral at a 90 degree would present, the 90 degree, yet 90 degree one way and a 90 degree right angle another would present the vertical and the horizontal, a difference between a landscape and a portrait, or some idea of superimposium. At least with like effects between like MP3 and MP4 format involving quantum and effects that way of attenuation. And how true it is, I'm not real sure the connectivity of the increments of 24, 48, 72, and 96. It's the 4 increments involving, like mastering like waveform on digital signal processors in my mind. And how true it is about the increments being 24, 48, 72, and 76. I mean, if they're combined as a standard, or what's involved of digital signal processing speed, or a combination of what would only be the idea of processing speed involving a certain standard, if that's an option as an automation, or a standard feature as a standard, and what's all involved with like digital signal processing speed as compared to some idea of like maybe if it's the thought of integration, or a customizer option of like customizing automation as maybe an option as compared to the standard. I'll look into that later, but anyway, it's something I'm thinking about anyway. Anyway, I'm going to get back to the PPI of Mississippi and the PPO. I think that I want to focus on the thing of the concentration of the alphanumeric is 24. X being the 24th letter of the alphabet. Okay. Iowa, the euro dollar. Okay, it's the thing about in my mind, going beyond the alphanumeric, so the 177, the lighting, and what light scribe is to lighting, and the 177 volts. Likewise, the 177 alphanumerics being like a telepathic power, or mental telepathy, or subliminal messages, minus 26, like God, game, card, lie, dog, and all that stuff about RCA, and the mascot as compared to the mascot being some idea of what a boycott and embargo would only mean. Um, the thought of maybe a border argument in the way, or and all that combine, okay, between all that. But anyway, that's a whole different direction. But anyway, so it seemed to be like the PPO and the PPI as presented to Iowa, the WA being 24, and the thing about W being the 23rd letter, or like W, and ultimately my thought like Fox 29 News in Philadelphia, what the deal is about PG-13 rating of a W2 is ultimately thought of a jurisprudence and the black back and the one word of like gross national product normally suggesting storage area network, and the black color code of like the United States constitutional law as well as like state statutes annotated being the black book, and the one pastel green of the Code of Sobriety, and even British Petroleum being the book of jurisprudence, and the black back representing the only thing about gross national product, or whether or not at the aggregate is only between the domestic and monetary, presenting some idea other than actual participation, and in color code of like import and export in the way of like immigration custom enforcement, or what jurisprudence only means in color code of like the one and only word of warehousing of state statutes, and being the black thing about space exploration, or thought of like the Deep Star 6 thing, or what jurisprudence and combined to the one and only word of color code of state statutes annotated in repudiation, and what that really is in that way. I mean, it's the one and only word, I mean, that I know of in the entire deal that identifies world history between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And, the Richard Nixon thing about the celebration, 200-year celebration of America, and all the American history that seemed to be like, the bicentennial quarter and Alpha-American 200, a plenipotentiary Lord Jesus Christ, and the bicentennial drummer, and all that stuff is getting to like the now thing of like, and to the new millennium, the TriStar, the tricentennial, the 300-year thing, and all that information about that. But anyway, so like, it seemed to be the deal about graffiti and confetti defining the meaning of whether or not if a preliminary prejudice, a product registration of a birth certificate would only be maybe the difference between graffiti or confetti, or the carbon footprint on the front lines of the beach, right? And the deal about the Christian thing about 2 sets of footprint being 4 feet, and then only one set being just 2 feet. And of course, Lord, where were you when I need you most? Okay, it's like that's when I'm scaring you. Or the thing about the front lines of the beach, right, representing a military barrel determined that way. Or likewise, some idea of amphibious, or re-entering heaven, and leaving some idea like television programming, or a method of banking that would be not necessarily some thought of like immigration custom enforcement or reason zero, and some idea of defining a little bit more about a 9 degree of the equator that would present more the vertical thing about reading Japanese from top to bottom, getting into the quantum side beyond absolute values, okay. Of a vertical, algebra going through like calculus into quantum, and the different design E and the computative formula, the formulative computation that gets into the structure beyond calculus, although the different design E and the absolute values of the vertical seem to be the deal between separation between church and state, of the absolute values are like